And we know Malcolm was always on the defensive end. He was always defending, those people who was downtrodden and oppressed. And newspaper clippings, because journalism sometimes is not fair. There's malpractice in journalism. They can write against you. They can give you negative reviews and so forth and so on. So you have to be very careful when you're actually reading the life of Al-Hajj Shabazz. Even in the book, the autobiography of Malcolm X, 527 pages, 19 chapters. Only 3 chapters is dedicated to him as a Muslim after he came back from Mecca. It's only 53 pages. Alex Haley wrote the epilogue, 83 pages. Okay, so these are the types of things that are misplaced in our history. Okay, also we know that Al-Hajj Shabazz, he actually was the one who organized the trip for Mr. Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad, to go to Mecca in 1959. He tried to get an entry for Hajj, but they refused him based on Islamic theology. But they allowed him to go in for the Umrah. And as you can see in the picture on the left, you see Imam Wahid Muhammad and his younger brother Akbar Muhammad being taught by Jamil Diab, who was actually from El Quds. At a very early age, they was being introduced to Islam. And of course, we know that Akbar Muhammad is probably the most educated indigenous Muslim in our culture because he obtained a PhD and he served on the American Fiqh Council. MashaAllah, he was a very, very brilliant man in that regard. Of course, when Al-Hajj Shabazz made the pilgrimage, he descended from the Nation of Islam and started the Muslim Mosque Incorporated. He started the OAAU, the Organization for Afro-American Unity, and the dynamics changed among those things. And one of the things that Al-Hajj Shabazz said in his letter, he said, I think that I may be the only Negro that come to Mecca. I don't know if you read his Hajj letters. And it just kind of like show you, as I mentioned, our community was conceived in 1935. Okay, my father made Hajj in 1962. Okay, Wali Akram made it in 1957. So it kind of show you how it was like oil and water. That we weren't really in close proximity and association with one another, and information was not being freely exchanged. Because when he said that, like you said, we had Dr. Rashid from Philadelphia, Dar Hikmah, the House of Wisdom, made Hajj in 1952, Hajj Hassan 1952, Wali Akram 1957. Actually, Hajj Starlet, who's still a survivor today, the oldest elder in our community, he made Hajj with Al-Hajj Shabazz in 1964, and my father in 1962. And of course, these are things that kind of like let you know that there's been 2 or 3 realms about the history of Islam in America. And usually when you cannot qualify all 3 of them, you're actually gravitating towards this narrative. Another person may be gravitating towards this narrative, and no one knows where they intersect. Okay? No one knows where they intersect. And we know 1965, February 25th, Al-Hajj Shabazz was assassinated. And this is a very unique time in my life as a youngster. Okay, because my father was a part of the transitional team. Al-Hajj Shabazz, when he used to go to 72nd Street, Riverside Drive, the Islamic Foundation of America, he would go in secret. He would go sit with Sheikh Dawud Faisal in secret. So he was trying to make transitions that was kind of like life-threatening, very risky. But when he was assassinated, there were so many threats that came into my household. If you go near Malcolm, you're going to get the same things as nature. But my father, being the imam of the National Organization for the Dinul University Arabic Association, had no choice because we knew Malcolm was a Muslim. And he had to rise to the occasion under unfavorable circumstance, and he did the janazah. And that iconic photo that you see is possibly the only proof that we have in our archives that Al-Hajj Shabazz actually had taken the Shahada, that he had made the pilgrimage, because we know that the Muslims don't pray over non-Muslims. So that was something very iconic. And not only that, he actually did the interment, the deafening. He made sure that not only was Al-Hajj Shabazz properly given his rights as a Muslim in the Salatul Janazah, but also in the deafening. And as you can see, the newspaper clipping said that there was expected threats, but they failed. Okay, and my father and Betty Shabazz, Hajj Dahir Shabazz, but she made Hajj 1 month after the assassination of her husband, and she was carrying twins. And she said if it was not for the Hajj, then she don't think that she would have been able to bear that kind of trauma. But she made the pilgrimage, and that's 32 years later, my father was actually doing the interment for her. So these are the type of things that happen, you know, as we were spreading Islam. You know, sometimes we have to acknowledge there was conflict, there was tension, there was animosity, and also loss of lives, you know, to get us to where we are today. Okay? Alhamdulillah, we can sit here today and have a conversation about a horrific past. MashaAllah. So my father continued, you know, the legacy. It wasn't like Al-Hajj bin Shabazz was assassinated, okay, we're going to stop. You know, we had the Dar Salam was on the front line. We had the NOIs on the front. We were still struggling for social justice. We was championing the Palestinian cause in 1971, standing in the United Plaza in New York saying Palestine, Palestine for the Palestinian people. This is not new to us. As I mentioned, I grew up in diversity. My father cited in the current report for an advisory for civil disorders, as he stood between the riders and the tankers when Governor Thomas Dunn in New Jersey had given the order shoot to kill. And he was called the peacekeeper because we stopped the bloodbath. Okay, and this is history. The Latino community was formulated out of Jihadi Institute. Bantu Soccer is a forerunner for the Alianza. Okay, these groups, through connection, through collaboration, working by committee, we began to grow as Muslims, and we established a foreign institute in Morocco, okay, right during the midst of 911. Can you imagine that? And if you can see that institute, lo and behold, that was an aviation training school. So imagine the kind of flack we got. In fact, we was packed up and sent back to America because they said they could not sustain any foreign institution. And of course, and coming to my end, my father also gave Shahada to Amir Barak and his wife, Amina, in his living room. And his son, Ras Barak, is the mayor of the largest city in New Jersey, Ras Barak. Zayd and Lamuma Shakur, the sons of Salahuddin Shakur, the grandfather of Tupac Shakur. That's Zayd in that coffin. That's Odinga carrying the coffin. So it shows you that social struggle, that social justice struggle was continued, but through negative press or suppressed press or no acknowledgement. No one knew about this. Okay, the public wasn't privy to this type of information. 1985, my father was the Hajj guy for Minister Louis Farrakhan. Okay, he worked for the robbers of the island for 15 years, gave 200 shahada to the Zulus, and built 7 masjids in Swaziland. So this is the legacy that we inherit. February 28, 1975, as you can see, this is the death and the funeral of Mr. Elijah Muhammad. And if you notice, the person that's standing there without the FOI cap on, that's Akbar Muhammad. Because he had defected. And he was in Egypt and Al-Assad. And he came back and he actually, came in to give his last respects. And of course, you can see all the sons of Mr. Muhammad in that. But Akbar is the only one that distinguished without having the FOI cap on. And of course, in 1976, Imam Muhammad transformed that organization on the Shahada, risked his life. Could you imagine taking a group of people, right, who was actually very passionate about the theology they was adhering to, and within abracadabra, he changed them to the Sunnah. That took an effort, it took courage, and it took sacrifice. And of course, mashallah, today we can sit shoulder to shoulder. And it wasn't like that in the past. And I know my brother Imam Ali, he knows that it wasn't like that in the past. It was very conflicted. But we worked through it. We worked through it. And we were patient. Alhamdulillah. And again, now, 2025, we don't see the idea of an immigrant or foreign Muslim is gone. We're all brothers and sisters. That whatever differences we have, we are brothers and sisters, And it's now time for us to reconcile our difference, because the enemy is apparent, and that's the shaitan. See, we've misidentified the enemy. We thought the enemy was someone who didn't look like you. You thought the enemy was someone who oppressed you. You thought the enemy was someone who abused you. But we never was able to identify the shaitan. Lanatullah alayhi. That is the enemy. As our beloved Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam instructed us. He said, help your brother, whether he is the oppressed or the oppressor. This is the words of our beloved Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Help your brother, even if he's the oppressed or the oppressor. And the companions, they were astonished by this statement. Ya Rasulullah, we know about helping the oppressed, but how do you help the oppressor? He said, refrain his hand. Islam is not a revolt. Islam is not an anti-American agenda. Islam is not fueled by racism and bad memories. Islam is da'wah. It is about calling all of the sons and daughters of Adam to Islam. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. And this example is embedded in the character of our Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Haythu qala ta'ala, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. Let us as Muslims bridge these gaps. Let us not reopen old wounds. Okay? And let us come together and show mercy and show patience. And let us move forward to call all of the sons and daughters of Adam to Islam. Assalamu alaikum.